Emily Parker had always been the kind of person who measured her worth by the effort she put into her work. Each morning, she woke early, brewed her coffee, and reviewed her tasks for the day with meticulous care. Her desk, organized and neat, reflected her approach to life, structured, purposeful, and determined. Yet, despite her consistent dedication, recognition seemed to elude her. She often watched as others received praise or promotions that she felt she had earned just as much, if not more. The thought gnawed at her, not out of envy, but from a quiet frustration that her hard work wasn't being noticed. She remembered a conversation she had with her father just a few weeks ago. While discussing her career, he had mentioned an old friend, David Collins, someone influential who had helped people in her field before. Emily had been hesitant at first, unsure if asking for assistance from her father's friend was the right path. But now, as she stared at her reflection in the mirror, she wondered if it might be the opportunity she needed. She reminded herself that there was no shame in seeking guidance, as long as her intentions were clear. The walk to David's office was a short one, yet each step felt heavier than the last. Her mind raced with a mixture of hope and nervousness. What if he dismissed her request? What if she appeared unprofessional or worse, naive? Emily pushed those thoughts aside and focused on the practicalities. Her goal was a promotion, and she needed someone who could guide her through the process. With a deep breath, she approached the building and stepped inside, the cool air of the lobby contrasting sharply with the warmth of the late afternoon sun outside. David's office was quiet, filled with the low hum of computers and the faint scent of coffee lingering in the air. Emily knocked gently and entered when she heard a friendly come in. The room itself felt welcoming but professional, a balance of authority and approachability. David, seated behind a large desk, looked up and smiled warmly. "Emily, it's good to see you," he said, his voice calm yet encouraging. The sight of him, poised and confident, made her heart race slightly, though she reminded herself that this was purely professional. After exchanging polite greetings, Emily found herself seated across from him, hands neatly folded in her lap. She began speaking with careful clarity, outlining her contributions at work, the projects she had led, and the dedication she had shown over the past year. "I feel ready for the next step," she said, her voice steady, though her fingers fidgeted with the hem of her sleeve. "I would appreciate your advice and guidance on how I might achieve a promotion." David listened intently, nodding occasionally, making notes on a pad in front of him. His attention was focused, his demeanor professional but kind. "I see," he said after a moment. "You've clearly put a lot of thought into this. Ambition like yours is rare, and it's good to see someone so dedicated to their work." His words were encouraging, and Emily felt a small sense of relief. She had been worried that her efforts would go unnoticed, yet here was someone acknowledging her drive. For a moment, the room felt suspended in a quiet balance of expectation. Emily noticed the subtle ways he leaned forward when discussing her achievements, the gentle encouragement in his tone, and the respectful distance he maintained. It was clear that he recognized her potential and was willing to help her navigate the path ahead. Still, Emily couldn't ignore the twinge of nervousness in her chest, a reminder that this was unfamiliar territory. She reminded herself that her intentions were entirely professional and that she had every right to seek guidance. As the conversation continued, David offered practical advice on steps Emily could take to strengthen her candidacy for a promotion. He suggested she take on certain projects that would showcase her leadership skills and visibility within the company. Emily listened closely, mentally noting each recommendation. She could see a path forward forming, one that relied on her own abilities and determination, guided by the insight of someone more experienced. When the meeting concluded, David smiled and said, "I think you have what it takes, Emily. With focus and persistence, you'll get there." Emily stood, shaking his hand firmly, feeling a mixture of gratitude and determination. The encounter had been encouraging, a blend of mentorship and opportunity, leaving her both motivated and reflective as she stepped out of the office. As she walked back down the quiet streets, She thought about the work ahead, the challenges she might face, and the decisions she would need to make. It was a beginning, one that promised growth, learning, and the pursuit of her goals, all anchored in her own integrity and dedication. In the days following her meeting with David, Emily couldn't shake the mix of excitement and unease that lingered in her mind. She had received clear guidance, practical steps to demonstrate her capabilities, and encouragement that she was on the right path, but something about the encounter stayed with her, a subtle tension she couldn't quite name. It wasn't discomfort in the usual sense. Rather, it was the awareness that she had entered a world where ambition and influence intersected in ways she hadn't navigated before. Back at work, Emily began to implement the advice David had given her. She volunteered for high-profile projects, stayed late to ensure deadlines were met, and documented her accomplishments meticulously. Her efforts were noticed by her immediate supervisors, and she started receiving positive feedback, small but meaningful. Yet, despite this progress, she felt an internal pressure building, an unspoken expectation to balance diligence with the subtle social dynamics she had glimpsed in David's office. One afternoon, Emily received an email from David. The subject line read simply "follow up." She hesitated before opening it, mindful of maintaining professionalism while acknowledging the mentor-mentee dynamic. The message was polite and supportive, offering additional guidance on handling certain office politics and suggesting strategies for presenting her work effectively to higher management. It was the kind of advice that could make a difference if applied thoughtfully. Emily considered how she would respond. She wanted to express gratitude while keeping the tone professional. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, drafting a careful reply. A few sentences of thanks, reassurance that she was implementing his suggestions, and a confirmation of her commitment to growing within her role. She sent the email, feeling a small sense of relief, yet still aware of the subtle tension in their interactions. As the days turned into weeks, David continued to provide guidance, always framed around professional growth. He suggested ways to lead meetings, refine presentations, and strengthen relationships with colleagues. Each interaction was structured and polite, but Emily began to notice that their meetings sometimes lasted longer than strictly necessary. She reminded herself that mentorship often required investment of time, yet the lingering thought of whether this guidance was entirely about career or if there were unspoken expectations began to weigh on her. Emily found herself reflecting more frequently, considering her values, ambitions, and boundaries. She confided in a close friend, sharing the challenges she faced at work and the guidance she had received. Her friend encouraged her to remain focused on her goals while staying aware of ethical lines. "It's about your career, Emily," her friend said. "Mentorship is valuable, but it should never make you uncomfortable. Trust your instincts." Those words resonated with her, offering reassurance as she navigated the complex terrain of ambition, opportunity, and personal integrity. One evening, Emily met with David to review the results of a project she had led. The discussion was productive, filled with analysis, constructive feedback, and strategies for improvement. Faceless visuals in her mind, David's hand gestures emphasizing points, charts, and notes spread across the desk, her own hands taking notes carefully, reminded her that the relationship was professional at its core. Yet, she couldn't ignore the subtle nuances. The way he praised her dedication, the attentiveness he showed to her concerns, and the lingering feeling that there was more at stake than just project success. This ambiguity made Emily cautious. She recognized the importance of maintaining boundaries while still benefiting from mentorship. Each meeting became a careful balancing act, absorbing guidance, implementing advice, and keeping interactions focused on professional objectives. Emily was learning to trust her instincts, to recognize when advice was purely constructive and when it carried a subtle undertone she needed to be mindful of. At the same time, Emily began to notice changes within herself. Her confidence grew, tempered by awareness. She could navigate office dynamics more effectively, present her ideas with clarity, and advocate for her own contributions. The tension she initially felt transformed into a determination to succeed on her own terms, to ensure that her achievements were based on her work and not on concessions to unspoken expectations. Despite the lingering uncertainty, Emily remained committed to her goal, a promotion earned through merit, not shortcuts. She carefully documented her accomplishments, sought feedback from colleagues, and implemented David's advice in ways that aligned with her values. Each day brought small victories, a step closer to recognition, and a growing understanding of herself, her strengths, her boundaries, and her principles. By the time another month had passed, Emily could see the results of her efforts. She had grown more confident, more capable, and more aware of the delicate balance between ambition and ethics. While the tension in her interactions with David remained, it no longer overshadowed her professional focus. Instead, it served as a reminder of the importance of integrity, self-awareness, and the careful navigation of opportunities. She was learning that career advancement was not just about skill or connection, but also about the choices one made along the way, and the ability to stay true to oneself even when the path was complicated. Emily Parker had reached a turning point. Weeks of focused effort and careful navigation had brought her closer to the promotion she had been striving for, yet she knew that her journey wasn't just about completing tasks. It was about maintaining integrity, making clear choices, and understanding the consequences of each decision she made along the way. The subtle tension in her interactions with David remained, but now she saw it as a test of her ability to stay professional, to balance ambition with ethics. One afternoon, Emily received a message from David suggesting a meeting to review her progress. She hesitated for a moment, recalling the moments of ambiguity in previous meetings, but reminded herself that her goal was clear. She wanted guidance for her career, not compromise. She replied politely, confirming a time that suited both of them. As she walked toward the office, her mind was focused, prepared for a meeting that would solidify her understanding of her own boundaries. The office was quiet when she arrived. David greeted her warmly, and they exchanged professional pleasantries. The discussion that followed centered on her recent project successes, the improvements she had implemented, and strategies for her continued growth within the company. David offered constructive feedback, highlighting areas where her leadership had been particularly effective and suggesting minor adjustments to refine her approach. Emily listened carefully, taking notes and absorbing every point that could help her advance without compromising her values. As the conversation progressed, David made a comment that carried a personal undertone, one that could have been interpreted as a test of her professionalism. Emily paused, aware of the moment and of the subtle pressure it implied. She felt a brief pang of anxiety, but quickly reminded herself of her goals. Her response was calm, professional, and assertive, steering the discussion back to career development and clearly signaling that her focus remained on her own growth. David noticed her composure, and though he maintained his friendly demeanor, the atmosphere shifted subtly. He recognized that Emily would not be swayed by anything outside of professional guidance. After the meeting, Emily left the office feeling a sense of clarity and empowerment. She understood that mentorship was valuable, but she also recognized that her own decisions determined her path. She had faced moments of temptation, moments where the lines between guidance and personal expectation had seemed blurred, and she had chosen to uphold her principles. The experience reinforced her confidence, not only in her professional abilities, but in her capacity to navigate complex situations with integrity. Back at her desk, Emily reviewed her accomplishments over the past several months. The projects she had led, the initiatives she had started, and the relationships she had built within the company all reflected her hard work and dedication. She realized that recognition was coming not because she had sought shortcuts, but because she had consistently demonstrated competence, reliability, and ethical judgment. The path she had chosen, though challenging, was the one that gave her a sense of lasting satisfaction. Within the following week, Emily's efforts were formally acknowledged. Her supervisor called her into a meeting, praised her recent work, and offered the promotion she had been working toward. Emily accepted with gratitude, fully aware that this achievement was the result of her own determination and the careful application of professional guidance. There was no ambiguity, no compromise, just the reward of dedication and ethical perseverance. As Emily reflected on the journey, she recognized the lessons embedded in her experience. Ambition was important, but so were boundaries. Opportunities could be valuable, but they required discernment and courage. Guidance was helpful, yet it needed to be applied wisely and in alignment with personal principles. She felt proud, not only of the promotion she had earned, but of the way she had navigated challenges, maintained integrity, and asserted her own standards in the face of subtle pressure. In the days that followed, Emily approached her new role with confidence. She continued to implement David's professional advice where it aligned with her values, always keeping the focus on her work and her growth. Her colleagues noticed her poise, her effectiveness, and the clarity with which she led projects. Emily had become not just a more competent professional, but also someone who understood the importance of self-awareness and the strength that comes from making principled choices. Looking back on the past few months, Emily knew that the experience had shaped her in ways beyond career advancement. It had taught her how to navigate complex dynamics, how to distinguish genuine mentorship from expectation, and how to trust her own judgment. As she sat at her desk reviewing plans for upcoming projects, she felt a quiet sense of accomplishment and balance. She had achieved her goal, maintained her integrity, and grown into a professional who could face future challenges with confidence, clarity, and self-respect. In that moment, Emily realized that true success wasn't measured solely by titles or recognition. It was measured by the strength to stay true to oneself while striving to reach one's full potential. And in that understanding, she found not just a promotion, but the foundation for a career built on ethics, skill, and unwavering determination.